Hello again. My name is Steve Turner, and today we're going to begin a series of lessons on the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel is broken up basically into two parts. There's 12 chapters in Daniel. The first 6 chapters deal primarily with historical incidents, and then the last 6 chapters deal with prophecies of Daniel. So we're going to go ahead and start with a little context. So again, these series of lessons are like Sunday school classes. So they each last about 25 minutes. And what we do is we're either studying a book of the Bible or we're studying some other book, Christian book. And today we're focusing on Daniel. Now, Daniel is situated in history. And so the book of Daniel, it gives us pretty much good markers about when it's happening. And you're going to see that as we read through Daniel, it gives us particular political leaders and things that are happening that enable us to mark it in time. And this is going to be a good lesson for us as far as the context, putting things in context. So as usual, what we usually do in a Sunday school class, or some Sunday school classes, when they're studying a book of the Bible, they'll read from the book, from the Bible, and then they'll stop and discuss that and the meaning of what they've read. And so we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and start. We'll today in this lesson, we'll cover the first 2 chapters of Daniel. And so we're going to go ahead and start that with the reading of Daniel, and then I'll stop and we'll discuss some of the things we've read. So this is Daniel, the first chapter, and I'm reading from the New International Version if you want to get your Bible and read along with me. And so we start in chapter 1, verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar; to Hananiah, Shadrach; to Mishael, Meshach; and to Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, "I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you." Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine that were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. Okay, let's stop there. So we get a lot of information about this particular scene, and it's lasting over a long period of time. So we know that it starts, so the book of Daniel starts in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. And we know that in that time period, Nebuchadnezzar is going to take over Judah. And he's going to bring quite a few Israelites back to Babylon. Now, I don't know how informed are you about Middle Eastern history, but we know from the Bible, Israel starts out with a king. The first king is Saul. Then we have David. Then we have Solomon. Then we have a series of kings. And so Solomon was the last one where we had the united Israel, so to speak. Israel breaks up into a north and south. The north is called Israel. The south is called Judah. Daniel is all about Judah. It's about the southern kingdom. So Daniel and his 3 other friends, they're taken from Judah, and they're kind of mentored and schooled in Babylonian culture, history, arts, science, math, everything. So they go to school. It's like they go to the university for 3 years. And they are really the top students. So we see that at the end of their training, they're presented before Nebuchadnezzar, and he finds them 10 times, let's just say here, he finds them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. So these are 3 or 4 really star pupils. And during this mentorship, we also see Daniel, especially, adhering to his Jewish tradition. He doesn't lose his culture. He maintains his culture. And he remains faithful to God, and we see that through his what he eats and drinks. And I don't want to make a lot of that, but it differentiates him and the 3 other Judeans from all the rest of the pupils, so to speak. Now, there's some actors here that we probably should at least mention. So we've got Nebuchadnezzar. Now, Babylon at this time is becoming a world kingdom. So it's taken over Judah, and it's expanded its realm. If you know much about either the Bible or history, Babylon, this is one of the world's greatest empires up until this time. And Nebuchadnezzar is going to be one of the greatest kings. He reigns for about 44 years. And so he's very, it appears he's pretty intelligent, because he actually tests the 4 Judeans, and he finds them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters. So that not only includes the students that he's working with, but also the teachers. So he must have quite a bit of knowledge, because he actually gave them the test, so to speak. So this gives us, it ends, this chapter ends with, and Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. So right off the bat, so to speak, the book of Daniel tells us how it starts, and it basically tells us the time frame that it's going to work under. It's going to work under about 70 years. So from when we have here the 3rd year in the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, where Nebuchadnezzar brought him back, took over Judah, to the first year of King Cyrus, who's a Persian. That's going to be about 70 years, and that's going to be about 70 years where the Judeans are in captivity. All right, so we've set the stage here. We've started the book. Daniel's come into play. We've got the three famous Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and that's another thing. So we have the first chapter of Daniel is written in Hebrew. And there are some other chapters written in Hebrew, but a lot of it is written in Aramaic or Chaldean. And so, and it switches on and off depending on the context and what's being discussed. So they're given Babylonian names. And the names that we're familiar with, that we talk about most of the time, are the Babylonian names, although a lot of times when Daniel's referring to them, he'll call them by their Hebraic names. So let's continue on. We're in chapter 2 now. In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I've had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." Then the astrologers answered the king, "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." The king replied to the astrologers, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it to me, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me." Once more they replied, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it." Then the king answered, "I'm certain that you're trying to gain time, because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me." The astrologers answered the king, "There is no one on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they did not live among the humans." This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and the men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went in to the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, "Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He disposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we ask of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king." Let's stop. So what we have here now is, this is later, in the second year of his reign. It's pretty close to the first, what we read in the first chapter. Nebuchadnezzar has this dream. It disturbs him, but it's a dream about the future, and it's a dream about the future of Babylon and beyond. And so he wants his wise men and that includes musicians, enchanters, astrologers, and also Daniel and his 3 friends. He says, first of all, you got to tell me what I dreamed. His astrologers, his wise men say, come on now, you tell us what the dream is and we'll interpret it for you. He says, no. You tell me the dream and that'll prove to me that you have some insight, and then you'll be able to interpret it for me. Well, no, and they're very honest here. They say no man can do this, which is true. But Daniel appeals to God, and he does it through the other three Judeans, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And here he's referring to them in their Hebraic names, okay? Their Jewish names. They plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery. So they pray to God to reveal this mystery to them. This is very important. When you're in trouble, what should you do? Pray to God to reveal the mystery to you. All right, so that you can come up with some solution. All right, so that's what happens. So this sets the stage for the revelation. So let's continue. Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means. The king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have greater wisdom than anybody else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation, and that you may understand what went through your mind. Your majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. Your Majesty, you are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind, and the beasts of the fields and the birds of the sky. Wherever they live, he has made you ruler over them all. You are that head of gold. After you, another kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. For iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom. Yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of the mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords, and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. Now, that's a lot of reading, but I think it's important that we read the Bible from the text. So a lot of what we learn is because we go back and we read and reread. And so the more we read this text, the more we kind of get an idea of what Daniel is all about. You got to remember, Daniel is an alien. He's a foreigner. And a lot of times when you come into a culture and you're not a native to the culture, there's a lot of suspicion of you. But this is what we know about Daniel and Meshach and Shadrach and Abednego. They were excellent students, and they adapted. They adapted, but they didn't give up their culture, and they remained faithful to their God. In the end, that's what is going to be their, I don't want to say saving grace, but it's not only going to be their saving grace, it's also going to be something that enhances their careers, because they're all going to have very prominent administrative careers in Babylon. You got to remember, Babylon is one of the world's recognized world powers, if you go back in history. These four men become great administrators in Babylon, and they even carry over. Daniel's going to carry over into the Medes and Persian empires, and that's going to be unusual when there's a change in regimes for that one person to remain in power, so to speak. So Daniel is going to have influence not only in the Babylonian Empire, but in the Mede-Persian Empire also. Now let's talk about the dream and the interpretation of the dream. So there's this dazzling statue. And so what it has a head of gold. Let's see, it has a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly of bronze, and thighs of bronze, legs of iron. What is that all about? Well, he tells him that Babylon is the head of gold. Okay? Now, the next empire is going to be the Medes, Persians, and they're going to be kind of a, I don't want to say split, but there's two groups, and they come to play, and they come together to develop an empire. And then we have its belly and thighs of bronze. So that's going to be the Greek Empire. And the last empire is the Iron Empire, which is one of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is the one we know most about as Christians because we study it a lot because of the New Testament. And that's when Jesus was alive, and that's who was in power when he was here. There are others, though. And then it talks about the feet. The feet are a mixture of iron and clay. Now, there's two components to that. One component is it's strong, but it's also brittle. And so, really, that last empire, I don't know. I mean, some say it's, I don't know that last empire. I'll just be frank with you. I do know that the empire that he talks about, where it says in verse 44, in the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will be left to another people. So we believe that's the kingdom of God brought about by Jesus. So again, and that kingdom will never be destroyed. And it says here, it will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will endure forever. Okay? Now, we see here again at the end where Daniel tells him what the dream is, interprets the dream. Nebuchadnezzar is very grateful. And he gives him, again, gifts, etc., and gives him more power. This is going to happen over and over, and this happens to us. God delivers us from something. He's merciful to us. We're thankful, and then we get on with our lives, and we kind of forget. And that's what's going to happen in the next chapter. We're going to see that happens to Nebuchadnezzar again. So we're going to end here and continue our next lesson. And so thank you for spending this time with us, and we'll continue our study of Daniel in our next lesson. Thank you very much.